Bonus short stories. Canned tuna. One rainy afternoon, I was sorting through my item box while enjoying a cup of rather minty tea that I'd bought recently. My familiars were napping, though in Fell's case, sulking was probably a more accurate description. We were supposed to go hunting on that day, at their, and especially Fell's, insistence, but when Gan and Dora-chan saw how dreary it was outside, they'd lost all interest in the excursion. I'd jumped on that bandwagon without a second thought, of course, and although Sway had been almost as excited to go hunting as Fell was, I managed to talk it into putting the trip off and saved myself from the miserable fate of going hunting in weather like that. The rain had been coming and going at random since first thing in the morning, and I could think of few things less enjoyable than getting intermittently drizzled on while plodding along after my familiars as they hunted monsters. Anyway, with our hunting trip on a rain check, I suddenly had a free afternoon that I decided to spend taking inventory of my item box. Its storage capacity was effectively infinite, which meant that I didn't have much of a reason to not throw any random thing I happened to pick up into it. If I didn't sort through it every once in a while and do some spring cleaning, I'd end up finding stuff in there that I didn't even remember obtaining. That was doubly true for ingredients. My item box stopped time for everything inside it, which meant that I never had to worry about anything spoiling. That was a good thing, don't get me wrong, but it also put me in the bad habit of letting all sorts of crap pile up in there, where I'd forget about it before I knew it. That being said, I'd already done a corner-to-corner check of my item box 2 months beforehand, so I wasn't really expecting anything surprising to be left inside. Wait, no, there is something. For some inexplicable reason, there was a single can of tuna sitting in my item box. My familiars tended to scoff at fish-centric dishes, so I could confidently say it wasn't left over from one of their meals. I pulled it out and gave it some thought. What did I buy this for? I remember now. I used canned tuna when I pre-made a bunch of breakfast dishes for myself. Specifically, I'd used it along with some green bell peppers I'd received from Alban to make a side dish. I'd had one extra can at the time, and it had been sitting in my item box ever since. I guess it's nice that I remembered and all, but how am I supposed to use this? For another breakfast dish, I guess? I'd just run out of pickles and had been thinking of making a nice, refreshing side dish for my breakfasts, which seemed like the perfect use for a spare can of tuna. I had some time on my hands too, so I hustled right off to the kitchen to get to work. Okay, time to cook. What exactly am I going to need, though? I was planning on making something relatively light and vibrant, and even though cucumbers were sort of a boring choice for pickle-adjacent dishes, they were a classic for a reason. Yeah, okay, something vinegary that uses tuna and cucumbers. Oh, I know. I'll make ponzu pickled smashed cucumbers. The recipe was incredibly simple, and since you more or less just threw all the ingredients into a freezer bag, there'd be basically no washing up to do after I was done. Alright, let's get to work. First, I washed some cucumbers Alban had given me, removed their prickly little spines, sliced off their ends, and put them into a plastic bag. Some of the cucumbers he'd grown were really huge, and I cut those in half, just to make them fit properly. Then I just gave them a few solid smacks with a rolling pin. Once I'd smashed the cucumbers enough to split them open, I started using my hands instead, breaking them up into smaller, bite-sized pieces. Breaking them apart with blunt force in that manner makes it easier for the other flavors to soak into the cucumber, but slicing them thinly with a knife works just fine too, of course. Next, I lightly salted the cucumber pieces, gave them a bit of a massage, and set them aside for 10 minutes or so to let the salt draw out some of their moisture. Once that was done, I drained the oil from the canned tuna and added the fish to the bag along with the cucumber. Last but not least, I threw in some ponzu and sesame oil, mixed it all together, and squeezed as much air out of the bag as possible before sealing it up. Alright, that should do it. Just gotta pop it into the fridge now. Letting the mixture chill for a while would give the flavors time to intermingle and make the dish even tastier. I decided to hold off on trying them until the next morning, when I'd have a helping with my breakfast. Today, at long last, we shall go hunting. The rains have passed, so I am in full agreement. Hell yeah, it's nice and sunny out. Couldn't ask for better hunting weather, I'm so in. Hunting time. I know. Just hold your horses until we're done eating, at the very least. The next morning, we were greeted by a perfectly blue and cloudless sky. It couldn't have cut a sharper contrast with the prior day's gloom, and the fair weather had my familiars jabbering on and on about the day's hunt, even while we were eating breakfast. They'd even requested a hearty, meat-filled meal the moment they woke up and checked on the weather, to keep them energized during the excursion. As if you guys even need it in the first place. You eat meat every meal regardless. I did acquiesce in the end, though, and whipped up some nice, simple pork bowls for them to stuff their faces with. They did just that, with incredible enthusiasm that would have spoken of their excitement for the hunting trip if it weren't for the fact that they basically always ate that way. Eat well, Fel said. We will need ample vitality for the day's hunt. Chem, do you have a target in mind, then? Gun asked. Of a sort. I have recalled a destination that will prove worthwhile. Look forward to it, Fel replied, then followed the answer up with a deep, ominous chuckle. Oh, God. Where's he planning on taking us to this time? Somewhere worthwhile, eh? That's high praise coming from you, Fel. All right. Gimme seconds. Sway wants seconds too. I shall partake as well, of course. And one for me. Coming right up, I said. I guess I should just be glad that everyone's in such a good mood, but ugh. There's no getting out of this hunting trip, is there? I guess we did get rained out yesterday, and we also spent a bit of time relaxing before then, so I can't complain that much, I thought to myself as I brought out a second round of pork bowls for everyone, which my familiars devoured. The gluttonous quartet's appetites were as unflagging as ever. They're really going at it today, actually. They were eating a breakfast and a half's worth of food, compared to their usual standard. I, on the other hand, felt a stomachache coming on just watching them chow down on a dish as heavy as pork bowls first thing in the morning. Fortunately, I had the smashed cucumbers I'd made the night before to distract me. Ah, now that's refreshing, I said as I took my first bite. The salty acidity of the ponzu and the aromatic depth of the sesame oil had soaked into the cucumber pieces, and the umami that the tuna added made it an incredibly delicious dish. This is so much better than you'd expect, considering how easy the recipe is, I reflected as I slowly savored the pickle, then followed it up with a bite of the mustard green and dried sardine rice ball I had also made for my morning meal. Yup, this is great too. Finally, I slurped up a mouthful of the simple tofu and wakame miso soup I'd made. No doubt about it. This is my kind of breakfast food, I said to myself as I shot my familiars and their pork bowls a sidelong glance. The birth of a revolutionary. Where once there was a church, now only a pitiful pile of rubble remained. The Church of Rubenorf's main temple used to loom over Ulysses, the capital of the Holy Kingdom of Rubenorf. Once, it was far and away the city's most extravagant building, but now it was a wreck. As I gazed upon its broken remains, I felt a powerful sense of vindication. I had always known that something was wrong with that church. When I was 7 years old, my brother, an unfailingly kind and gentle boy of 12, was summoned into the Church of Rubenorf's service. He'd never said that he wanted to be a priest, or anything of the sort, and yet the church's people insisted that he had the makings of a holy man and dragged him off, paying no heed to his protests. Our parents were ecstatic about my brother's recruitment. They considered it an honor, but I was miserable to have lost my sibling, and with so little warning. I found myself resenting my parents' blind acceptance of the situation, and came to loathe them, the honor they so valued, and, eventually, the very kingdom I lived in. I despised its willingness to let the Church of Rubenorf get away with whatever tyranny it saw fit to inflict upon us. And so, the moment I reached adulthood, I left my home and my oh-so-devout parents to seek my own fortune. I chose to become an adventurer and strove to achieve independence as quickly as I could manage it. I wanted to raise my rank as fast as possible so that I might bid this rotten nation goodbye, and I worked myself to the bone to accomplish that goal, pushing through all sorts of hardships. However, the Holy Kingdom of Rubenorf was a land lacking in aspiring adventurers like me. Unable to find a party for myself, but still dedicated to leaving my homeland behind, I took to attending each and every lesson and training course the guild offered. At long last, I grew competent enough with a sword to take on horn rabbits and goblins single-handedly, and accepted my first quest, a mission to collect medicinal herbs from the fields outside of town. It was on that day, as I returned to the guild with a sack full of herbs, that a voice rang out in my head like a bolt from the blue. The source of the voice declared himself to be Demiurge, the god of all creation, and went on to claim that there was no such god as Rubinoff to begin with. He interrogated the Pope and denied the Church's most central teaching, that Rubinoff was the omniscient and almighty God of humanity. He claimed that the gods drew no distinction between the mortal races, and that the Church of Rubinoff was a religion founded for the sake of amassing wealth and led by a crew of miserly moneygrubbers. The street I was walking through was crowded with people, and I heard a number of them cry out, "Rubinoff's not real." But Rubinoff is the god of humanity. It was his hand that guided us to greatness, was it not? The Church of Rubinoff was founded for the sake of money. It seemed, clearly, that I was not the only one hearing the god of all creation's missive. If Demiurge was nowhere nearby, yet was capable of transmitting his voice to so many people all at once, it seemed safe to say that he was not overstating his divine nature. That, in turn, meant that it was safe to say the god of all creation spoke true. What need would a god have to lie, after all? That said, I couldn't have cared less about Rubinoff not existing. I never believed him in the first place. My parents would have called me a heretic, demanded that I repent, and beat me severely if I'd ever let that fact slip out, so I had always kept it to myself, but I was a non-believer from the start. The Church's upper echelons being staffed by moneygrubbers was no surprise either. Why else would commoners like us spend our days in miserable poverty while the clergy walked around in gilded robes and extravagant jewelry? Not to mention that the higher in the ranks a member of the Church rose, the more conspicuously corpulent they tended to become. They had the terrible taste of the nouveau riche, and anyone with sense would know exactly where the money to enable that aesthetic came from. That, however, didn't bother me much. The Holy Kingdom citizens were all too eager to give up their earnings to the Church, and that was their decision to make. What caught my attention was the part where Demiurge spoke of how the Church forced your fellow men to surrender their sons and daughters to you when they suited your fancy, toying with them until they ceased to amuse you, then selling them off as slaves. I was your average, run-of-the-mill commoner, but my brother was different. He was a lad handsome enough to have been known all around the neighborhood for his striking looks. Was that why the Church had claimed him? To use him as a plaything? How could that be? Worse still, Demiurge had gone on to say that not only were they sold as slaves, they were sold to the Geisler Empire. The empire's brutality and inhumanity was well known, even here in the holy capital, and Demiurge had gone out of the way to note that those who had been sold to the empire had been put to the sword. What, then, of my brother? Had he not entered the priesthood after all? I'd been told that my parents had begged the Church for information on what had become of him, and the answer they had gotten was that he'd been sent to a town in the northern reaches of the country to finish his training. My parents were all too pleased to boast about how he'd be a full-fledged priest as soon as his studies concluded, and I'd always been relieved to know that, even though he'd been all but abducted, at least he was still alive. Was he, though, in truth? What had happened to him? I was so anxious, so starved for answers, that I found myself pushing my way through the crowd before I knew it, making my way toward the ruined temple. "Hey!" I shouted at a group of priests who were gathered up by the wreckage, looking out over it in shock and horror. The Church of Rubinoff took my brother from our family 9 years ago. We were told he was in the final stages of his training to become a priest, and had been sent to a village up north, but that God of all creation claims you've been selling the children you take in as slave. Where's my brother? What have you done to him? Answer me, damn it. And my child was taken as well, another voice in the crowd rang out. Wasn't he supposed to become a priest? They told us that my niece had what it took to join the clergy, and dragged her away. That's what happened to my youngest brother too. I was far from the only one present who'd had a family member taken from him, and before I knew it, all of us were thronging around the priests. What do you want from us? How are we supposed to know? One of the priests cried. It was the higher-ups. They are to blame. That's right. We don't know a thing. How could we? We're just underlings. We don't make the decisions. This has nothing to do with us. The priests shouted desperately, pallid and panicky as they disavowed the church's actions. Their attitudes instantly told me that Demiurge had spoken true, and a seething fury began to well up within me. The God of all creation was telling the truth. You sold my brother to the Empire, you monsters, I screamed. Before I even realized what I was doing, I'd picked up a stone from the ground and hurled it at the priests with all my might. Rubenorf's omniscient and almighty? The God of humanity? My ass he is. He doesn't even exist at all, does he? Admit it, you sons of bitches. Admit it. I screamed as I threw another stone. Stop that. Somebody, make that man stop. What are the paladins doing? Grab him already, you fools. I paid the priests' wails no mind. Shut your mouths, you pompous, arrogant fakes. All my life, you bastards have told me that the Church of Rubenorf would save me so long as I believe. Where's that salvation now, damn it all? How's a band of kidnappers and slavers supposed to save anyone? I screamed. I couldn't stop myself from flinging stones and words with equal vigor. And that's not all. We commoners struggle just to get by, but what about you people? Look at yourselves. Look at the clothes you wear. You strut about in those golden-threaded abominations while we wear the same old rags for years on end, taking care of them because we know we can't replace them. You've grown fat and complacent off the coin you've stolen from us. We were blessed by Rubenorf himself, and granted the divine mission to spread his teachings, one of the priests shouted back. And why am I supposed to care? As if I ever believed you. Rubenorf's not real. You heard that as well as I did. Silence, you heretic. Why yes, that's right, another priest chimed in. That man is a heretic and a blasphemer. Seize him at once, he called out to the people around me, none of whom moved a muscle. They'd heard the voice of a true God, and by Demiurge's revelation, all the things they'd turned a blind eye to for so long were finally brought into sharp perspective. To hell with the Church of Rubenorf. You've been living large off the money you stole from us, and you've done nothing in return. You're thieves, kidnappers, and human traffickers. I shouted as I threw another stone as hard as I could. That's right. How many times have they come by our houses to collect tithes? Said a member of the crowd. They take so much, we can hardly feed ourselves. It's always money, money, money with those people. They're the reason why my children have to go to bed hungry. And when they've bled us dry and we don't have a coin left to give them, they have the gall to call us heretics. We've always paid our tithes, but when I took my grandmother in for a checkup after she fell ill, they demanded an outrageous sum to even see her. She died because we couldn't pay their damn fees. Voices started ringing out one after another, each more enraged than the last. The priests trembled with fear, shouting that we were heretics and would pay for our blasphemy, only to finally flee from us. I used to want nothing more than to leave this miserable country behind, but after everything I'd heard, I reconsidered. After all, if I left, who would avenge my brother? The Church of Rubenorf was a blight upon the world, a blight that had to be eradicated, and the way I saw it, there was no better place to start the purge than here, in their own holy capital. Who brought down the most? It was bright and early in the morning, and my familiars were in a fantastic mood. We'd recently finished up a quest that the guildmaster had asked us to handle, securing us a long-awaited moment of free time, and my familiars had insisted that we go hunting yesterday, only for the excursion to get rained out. The issue wasn't that Fell and the others couldn't hunt in the rain so much as it was that interesting monsters were less likely to wander out of their dens during a downpour, not to mention that dreary weather made it harder to get excited about any sort of excursion outside. In the end, we'd cancelled the trip by a majority vote. Fell was the only one who'd objected, and he spent the rest of the day grumbling about how we'd let a little rain thwart our plans. In any case, our hunting trip had been postponed until the weather cleared up, and lo and behold, the next morning greeted us with a perfectly cloudless blue sky, much to my familiars' delight. They'd jumped right into hunting mode, ranting about how they were going to track down enough meat that they'd be eating it for days, as if they didn't already eat meat 3 meals a day, and scarfed down their extra-large stir-fried pork bowls with wild enthusiasm. The moment our breakfast was finished, my familiars herded me out the door. They were about to rush off to the hunting grounds at top speed, but I just barely managed to stop them and direct us toward the Adventurers Guild first. I knew for a fact that the guildmaster would never let me hear the end of it if we went out hunting without reporting in beforehand, after all. "So, where exactly were you thinking of going today?" I asked as we waited for the guildmaster, who a staff member had gone off to fetch. Fell had mentioned that he'd remembered a good hunting ground for us to go to, but he hadn't given me the details yet. "A valley located a ways to the west of here," Fell replied. "I believe the humans call it Termus Valley." "Termus Valley?" Gunn cocked his head. "Ah, that place. I believe it was actually." "Oh, it's you lot. What are you getting up to today?" the guildmaster asked as he arrived partway through Gunn's sentence. "Good morning," I said. "My familiars were asking me to take them out hunting today, actually, so." "What, again?" the guildmaster sighed. "Least you bothered cluing us in this time, I guess." "Yeah, because I knew you'd blow a gasket if I didn't." "Can't deny that we turn a tidy profit off your hunts either," he added. "Ha ha, yeah, I guess you would. My party never wants to hold on to anything other than the meat, so it just works out that way naturally." "Where are you going this time, then?" asked the guildmaster. "To, I think Fell said it was called Termus Valley." "What valley? Where's that?" "Sounds like the guildmaster hasn't heard of it either, then." "My liege, I believe Fell was mistaken," Gunn chimed in. "The valley in question is called Terminus Valley, not Termus Valley." "Hear that, Fell?" I said. Terminus Valley? Perhaps that was its name, but I could hardly care less one way or the other. It is our destination regardless of what it is called. "Well, you heard him," I said, turning back to the guildmaster. "Terminus Valley? Terminus, wait. Terminus Valley?" the guildmaster bellowed, going from a mutter to a screech in seconds flat. "Whoa, what's wrong?" I yelped back. "Terminus Valley. Terminus as in terminal, as in the end of all things. As in if you go there, you sure as hell aren't coming back." "Wait, like, the adjective terminal? That's what it was named after." "You didn't know? Terminus Valley's full of wyverns. Everyone knows that. Take one down, and 100 more descend on you and rip you to shred." "They what?" "Not even S-rankers go to that hellhole unless they absolutely have to." "Gah! Wait. They're trying to drag me to a place like that." "Hey, hear that, Sway? He said there's wyverns there," Dora-chan commented. "Oh, wyverns. Sway knows those. They're the ones that zip around in the sky. Sway pew-pewed a bunch of them before." "Oh, did you?" Gunn chimed in. "Yeah. Uncle Fell taught Sway how to beat them, and Sway took down a whole bunch." "Oh ho! And what technique was it that Fell taught you?" Well, they fly around in the sky, so you have to hit their heads or their wings. But the heads are really small, so sometimes you can't hit them. That's why you hit the wings instead. Then they fall, and you can beat them up on the ground." "Ah, yes, a wyvern's head and wings are certainly its most vulnerable areas. They would indeed be the right targets for you and Fell, seeing as you can't fly. "I mean, I can fly and I'd still probably wanna go for those bits," Dora-chan noted. "You could take 'em down in one shot that way. Yeah, think I'll try that too. Why did the conversation get so violent the second wyverns came up? That's not something you guys should be excited about. Seriously." "Right, okay. Hunting trips off," I said. The subject of wyverns had brought back some really unpleasant memories. The last time we'd had a run-in with wyverns, they'd come right at me. That was terrifying enough on its own, and imagining the same thing happening again, except with hundreds of them in the picture. Even if the wyverns didn't kill me, the heart attack sure would. "What nonsense are you speaking?" Of course the trip is not off, Fell said. Quite right. I don't know what you're worried about, my liege, but I assure you that a flight of wyverns is nowhere near dangerous enough to pose a threat to us, Gen agreed. No, I've never actually gone hunting for wyverns myself. I'm so down for this, Dora-chan said. Sway too. After all, wyvern meat's super yummy, our slime chimed in. Yes, Sway is correct. Wyvern meat is rather appealing, and the stock that Sway and I claimed some time ago is long since depleted, is it not? I mean, yeah, I reluctantly admitted. Then we have no choice but to go on the hunt. We will be able to obtain far more meat at today's destination than we did during our last encounter with wyverns, as well. Wait, just how many of those things are you planning on taking down? Not enough to eradicate them. Were we to do that, we would destroy the hunting ground as well. We will bring down half of the wyverns we find there, though, at the very least. Half of them? When there are supposed to be hundreds in that valley. And hold on, Fell, you're already planning for our next trip there. I've been traveling with you for a pretty long time now, and that's enough to even freak me out. Those poor wyverns, seriously. I spent a moment just standing there, cringing at Fell, until the guildmaster's voice brought me back to reality. Well, guess that's that, he said. Indeed, Gun agreed. I will persuade my liege to go along with the plan, I assure you. I know you don't have anything to worry about, but watch yourselves. Anyway, sounds like we're in for a busy day. I'd better let Johann know we've got wyverns coming in, the guildmaster said, then headed off into the back of the guild. I blinked. Wait, why'd he leave? We weren't done talking, were we? We were, Gun said. I wrapped up the exchange while you were speechless, my liege. I promised him that we would bring all the wyverns we hunt down back here to be butchered, and he agreed to inform the towns on our flight path of our excursion. The butchering fee will be waived for the wyverns we bring to the guild, and in exchange, we will sell them all the materials they request, including a small quantity of the meat. I trust that none of you have any objections, he asked, turning to the rest of my familiars. I do not like the idea of surrendering meat to them, but as long as it is only a small quantity, I am willing to let it go. Yeah, works for me. Not like we care about the bits we can't eat anyway, right? Sway doesn't mind as long as we get some meat. There you have it. The matter is settled with no outstanding issues. Let us be off. Yeah, my familiars cried in unison. No, I wailed, alone. You can't seriously want to go to a wyvern-infested nightmare valley, right? We're calling this off. No, we're not, my familiars replied, once again in perfect sync. New. As usual, I found myself swept off to adventure by my familiars before I even knew what was happening. Well, here we are. An honest-to-goodness wyvern nest. Yeah, there sure are a lot of them, I mumbled in disbelief. Why are you so taken aback? That goes without saying. It is the whole reason we came here to begin with. You'll enjoy this more if you simply resign yourself to it, my liege. Alright, now that's what I call a hunting ground. Oh, woo, there's so many. Sway's gonna beat up the most. I take that as a challenge, Sway. I shall be the one to bring down the most foes. Oh, I think not. I'm the most powerful of all of us, after all. You guys aren't serious, are you? You know this is the sort of situation where being small and adaptable gives you an edge, right? I've got this one in the bag. It is a contest, then. We shall each vie to slay the most wyverns. Ooh, I like it, and I'm gonna win it, too. Sway's gonna get first place. Gra ha ha ha. I won't be letting youngsters like you defeat me that easily. Then let us begin. Oh, and your duty will be to collect and tally the wyverns that each of us defeat, Fell said to me as an afterthought. Wait, you can't just decide that on your own. You expect me to wander down into a full-on flight of wyverns and count the ones you kill? We will raise a sturdy barrier, my liege. You will have nothing to fear, Gun said. Indeed. Barriers conjured by the two of us could only be broken by one who equals us in strength. Well said. We'll be counting on your counting, my liege. Okay, let's get out there. Sway'll be back soon, master. What? No. Wait. I shouted, but my familiars, naturally, did no such thing, racing off toward the wyvern-infested valley without a moment's hesitation. Oh, for the why me? By the time I had very timidly made my own way toward the valley, the hunt was well underway. Have at you, Fell shouted, then conjured up several dozen boulders using his earth magic. He launched them into the air with a roar, bringing 14 wyverns crashing to the ground, assuming I counted right. Off to a slow start, I see. Let me show you how it's done, Gun jabbed. He was using all 4 of his limbs to pluck the wyverns from the air and dash them against the ground, one after another. Come on, come on, come on. If you wanna get me, then get me, Dora-chan taunted. He was using the tactics that Sway had taught him, zipping nimbly through the thronging flight of wyverns as he used ice, fire, and wind magic to smash their heads and perforate their wings. Sway's gonna pew-pew all of you. Take this, and this, and this. Sway yelped as it sent acid bullets flying at the wyverns with the precision of a trained sniper. Watching my familiars gleefully bringing down the wyverns, which I still couldn't see as anything other than straight-up pteranodons, was exasperating, to say the least. They're really going all out today, I muttered, though honestly, my familiars went all out every time we went hunting. As I shook my head at the excess of it all, Fell shot me a message. Hey. You do intend to collect our prey, I trust? Yes, I know. I'll do it now, I replied. Sheesh. Why do I have to have this chore shoved off onto me, anyway? Isn't collecting your own catches part of a hunter's job? In spite of my griping, I got to work picking up all the fallen wyvern corpses. That makes 24. That's gotta be enough for us, right? I said to myself, though I knew that it was hopeless. Fell and the others would never let me hear the end of it if I didn't pick up each and every wyvern they took down, so I heaved a sigh and got back to work. Just as I reached out to put the 25th wyvern corpse in my item box, however, scree. Jiga. An enormous maw filled with razor-sharp teeth bore down on me. I shrieked, fell over backward, and threw up my arms to protect my face. Whump. A moment passed, and I timidly lowered my arms and opened my eyes. The wyvern was still there, gnawing in vain at the barrier between us, but it seemed that Fellengun really had made it tough enough to keep the likes of a wyvern from breaking through. Oh, and now that I was taking a closer look at said wyvern, I noticed that its wings were injured. Shooting them down's all well and good, but you have to finish them off too, guys. I grumbled as I tried to ignore the horrid, moan-like grunts the wyvern made as it tried and failed to chew through the barrier. I sighed. What am I supposed to do now? My familiars were all totally lost in their hunt, and clearly weren't interested in stopping to listen to me. I guess it's up to me to finish it off, then, I said as I brought out the mithril spear that Sway had made for me, then hesitated. Maybe I'd better go with a magic sword, actually. Just for safety's sake. I put the mithril spear back into my item box and pulled out Gram instead. Out of all the magic swords I'd obtained, it was the one that felt most natural in my hands. Sorry about this. Hiya. I shouted as I swung Gram directly at the wyvern's neck. Shwick. The blade sliced through without the slightest hint of resistance, and a moment later the wyvern's head dropped to the ground. I carefully set about collecting its body, when suddenly... Scree. Gah. Again. To make a long story short, my familiars weren't doing a great job of finishing off their wyverns that day. My magic sword was about to get an unprecedented workout. Dang it, guys, if you're gonna hunt then at least finish the job. Shwick. Ugh, it's finally over. What did I do to deserve this, anyway? Did you gather up all of our spoils? And who brought down the most of them? I'm sure it was me, wasn't it, my liege? Nah, you kidding? It's gotta be me. It was Sway, right, master? I looked away. My familiars loomed. Who was it? They asked in unison. Nobody. Nobody got the most. Or, really, I got the most, if we're talking in terms of actual kills. Finish your prey off after you bring it down, damn it. Cooking from the back of the box, baked cheesecake. Alright, I think it's time to make some sweets, I said as I stood up from my seat. We'd finished lunch some time beforehand, and I'd been taking it easy for a moment before I jumped into my next task. Oh, Sway? That morning, Sway had asked me what we'd be having for our daily snack time. The slime had been practically beside itself with excitement to help me cook something, and even though I'd been planning on taking the easy route and buying some cakes from my online supermarket's bakery section or from Fumia, I'd quickly scrapped that idea and agreed to go along with Sway's wishes instead. How was I supposed to say no to my cute little slime? Of course, when the time actually came. Yup, sure enough. Sway's out like a light. Fel, Gan, Dora-chan, and Sway had all curled up in a corner of the living room and were now sound asleep. Dora-chan was leaning up against Gan, while Sway had bedded down in Fel's fluff. Ha ha. Well, aren't they a happy little family? I chuckled to myself. It really did look like Fel and Gan were two parents napping with their kids, in the most heartwarming way possible. Yeah, no way I can wake them up when they're sleeping that soundly, I muttered as I watched Sway slumber away. Guess I'll be making our sweets alone today after all. Sway can help me out tomorrow instead, I concluded, then tiptoed off to the kitchen on my own. My first task, of course, was deciding what to make. I spent a moment rooting through my item box, until my hand fell on the perfect source of inspiration. Aha! I said as I pulled out a box of pancake mix, then looked at the recipe printed on its back. Ooh, baked cheesecake? That sounds kinda tough, and can you even make those out of pancake mix? I muttered, but upon actually giving the recipe a read-through, I found that I might have been mistaken. Interesting. Yeah, I think I could actually pull this off. It doesn't even take that many ingredients. I'll need pancake mix, cream cheese, sugar, plain yogurt, eggs, and lemon juice. I already had the pancake mix, sugar, and eggs, plus plenty of bottled lemon juice left over from a previous recipe. Looks like I'll only have to buy the cream cheese and yogurt. Once I had my list of ingredients sorted, I headed right over to my online supermarket's menu, picked out a package of cream cheese and a tub of yogurt, and bought them on the spot. Okay, that handles the ingredients, I said. I double-checked the recipe, just to be safe, then got right to work. First, I let the cream cheese come up to room temperature, then plopped it into a bowl. Next, I had to beat it with a hand mixer until it turned soft and became even creamier in consistency. BVR. Okay, that should do it. When the cream cheese was soft enough, I added the sugar and beat it again. Once the sugar was incorporated and the mixture no longer felt gritty to the touch, I could move on to the next step. There we go. Next up's the eggs, I think, I said, then added them in stages, mixing thoroughly between each egg. And now I throw in the yogurt and lemon juice. I added the yogurt first, mixed it in, and then poured in the juice before blending everything together again. Last but not least, I add the pancake mix and fold it in with a rubber spatula. With that, the cheesecake batter was ready to go. Now I just had to cook it. I lined cake tins with parchment paper, poured the batter in, and then tapped the pans against the countertop a few times to pop any large air bubbles before sliding them into the already preheated oven. You know, that was a lot easier than I thought it'd be, but I guess I shouldn't be saying that until it's actually out of the oven, I said to myself. Sometime later. Okay, looks like it's done, I said. I'd probed the center of a cheesecake with a bamboo skewer, and since the skewer came out clean, I felt safe assuming the cakes were finished. It looks pretty good too. Now I just had to cool them down. Sometime later, when the cheesecakes were chilled enough to demelt. Oh, I cooed as I peeled the parchment paper off one of the cakes. It looked so similar to the baked cheesecakes they sold in stores, I was almost a little moved. How's it taste, though? I took a bite, and felt my eyes widen. This is great. It was the first time I'd ever made a baked cheesecake, and my effort had been a truly rousing success. It was soft, moist, and out of this world delicious. I'd always been more of a no-bake cheesecake person, but this one was good enough to make me seriously reconsider that allegiance. It was so good, in fact, that I finished the slice that I'd cut for myself before I knew it. Man, that was good. Wait, if my familiars catch me now, they're gonna start complaining about me hoarding good food for myself. I'd better bring their portions out right away. I brought the baked cheesecakes out to the living room, where I was surprised to find everyone still asleep for once. I gave each of them a pat and said, "Hey, guys, it's snack time," which managed to rouse them in an instant. Fel let out a big yawn. "A fine nap that was," he said. "Yes, a moment of rest after lunch is a fine thing indeed," Gun agreed. "I smell something cooking, something sweet. What are we having this time?" Dora-chan asked. "I made baked cheesecakes. They turned out pretty well too," I replied. At that point, Sway bounced over to me. It, unlike my other familiars, did not seem pleased. "Oh, but Sway said that Sway would help cook today." "I know, I'm sorry. You were just sleeping so deeply, I couldn't bring myself to wake you up. You can help tomorrow, okay?" "Okay. No take-backs." "Chem. Yes, this does satisfy. It's quite rich, but not as cloying as I feared it might be. Right. I think I like this sorta cake. It's really yummy." The baked cheesecake was drawing pretty solid reviews from my familiars. I was just shocked that you could make so many different sweets by reading the back of pancake mix boxes, myself. Needless to say, everyone gobbled up a whole cake each, then asked for seconds, which seemed like the right moment to shake things up a little. "Here, try it with some of this on top. It's good, trust me," I said, offering a very simple strawberry sauce that I'd made out of jam while the cheesecakes were baking. All it took was strawberry jam, water, sugar, and a little lemon juice, which you cooked together until the mixture thickened. I tried a bit of the sauce on another piece of cheesecake as well, even though part of me thought I was going a little too hard on the sweets. I told myself it was fine every once in a while, though, and the sauce really did add something to the dish. "Is this sauce made from the red fruits you have cooked with before?" Fel asked. "Strawberries, yeah," I confirmed. Yes, this is decent. I believe the sauce improves the experience. It's delicious this way as well, yes, but I think I preferred the cake on its own. I could go either way, myself. Gotta love options, though. Means it'll never get boring. Sway likes both of them too. Let's make something even yummier tomorrow, master. Ha ha ha. Yeah, sure. Let's do that. Mukouda's cooking class, still more eggs. Once again, Ija and Teresa had asked me to teach them how to cook a new egg dish. I wasn't even surprised, at that point. Teaching them how to cook with eggs was just another part of my routine. It was pretty satisfying to see how happy everyone was about being able to eat all sorts of egg dishes, to be fair, so it wasn't like it was a thankless task or anything. Last time, I'd taught them how to make poached eggs, which had been so well received that they were now vying for fried eggs seat as the #1 egg dish in my estate's popularity rankings. They'd been a hit, for sure, and they did a good enough job of capturing the true essence of what makes eggs delicious to become as much of a staple as fried eggs were. That said, I couldn't help but be concerned when I heard Ija and Teresa report back about how successful the poached eggs had been. After all, that meant that they'd want to learn even more simple dishes that would let an egg's natural deliciousness come through, right? What else could I even teach them, at this point? I mulled over the question for quite some time, only for an answer to hit me in the middle of breakfast. "Oh, of course," I thought as I chewed a piece of rolled omelette. "I haven't taught them how to make these yet." Rolled omelettes were quite simple, but also truly delicious. I considered them one of the most fundamental egg dishes, even. They were also commonly seasoned to be a little sweet, which I was a big fan of. That settled it in my mind. I'd teach everyone how to make rolled omelettes this lesson. Celia ended up participating as well this time around. She loved eggs so much that she wanted to learn how to make all sorts of dishes with them herself, and had pestered her mother into letting her come along. I'd always had the impression that she was shy and not particularly assertive, so it was a bit of a surprise to hear that she was being that demanding. Not in a bad way by any means, though I was actually glad to hear that she could ask for the things she wanted so directly these days. After all, it doesn't hurt to indulge kids' whims every once in a while. With rolled omelets on the menu, it was time for me to splurge a little. Preparing rolled omelets required a particular sort of rectangular frying pan, and I bought enough of the best pans my online supermarket had to offer to have one for each of my students to use. They were technically superior to the one that I used myself, actually. Something about buying cookery for other people made it easier to resist the urge to penny pinch. Then again, I'd never had any complaints about my current pan, so I was fine with continuing to use it. With that, my preparations were complete. I called Ija, Teresa, and Celia into my kitchen and began the lesson. Okay, let's get started. Ija and Teresa were both brimming with motivation at the thought of learning a new egg recipe. Celia was right there with them, her eyes wide with excitement as we started the lesson. I'll be teaching you a dish called rolled omelets today. I've been getting the sense that your families both prefer egg-forward dishes, and this recipe falls right into that category. It's a little special too, I explained as I pulled the 3 frying pans I'd bought out of my item box. You need a pan like this in order to make them properly. It's rectangular, Ija said. I've never seen a frying pan like it, Teresa noted. All 3 of my students looked mystified, and I nodded. That's right, a rectangular frying pan. It'll probably be easiest if I just show you how it works. Watch and learn. With that, I kicked off my usual teaching method, preparing the dish myself while I narrated the steps. First, you crack the eggs into a bowl, I explained, then showed them how you mix the eggs together, taking care not to make them froth up. The seasonings, soy sauce and sugar, went in next. I like my rolled omelets on the sweet side, so I use a little more sugar than you might want to. You can season yours to taste. I'd supplied them with soy sauce and sugar in the past, so I knew they'd have some of both on hand. Of course, I also knew that people tended to cook with the seasonings they were most familiar with, and I'd gotten the impression they had an awful lot of soy sauce that was sitting around unused. This seemed like a great opportunity to use some up and get them accustomed to the sauce at the same time. It was super versatile once you got in the habit, after all. If you go a little heavy on the seasoning, these omelets make for a really great side dish. They're awesome with a bowl of rice, I told them. I was starting to crave some rice myself, and decided to make some strongly seasoned rolled omelets to store away as part of my stock of breakfast food. Rice. That's the white grain you gave us, right? Ija asked. That seemed to jog Teresa's memory as well. I had taught them how to cook rice at some point in the past, and had given them a stock of it as well, but perhaps unsurprisingly, they and their families had an overwhelming preference for bread. Yeah, I know that bread's sort of a staple for you, and you'd usually pick it over rice, I admitted. Dishes flavored with soy sauce go really well with rice, though. Like, you remember how good that barbecued meat I've made before was, right? The sauce I put on that uses soy sauce as its base. That's why it pairs with rice so perfectly. Now that you mention it. I see. Barbecue and rice were really good together. Whether or not you cooked the meat on an actual grill, and whether you thoroughly marinated it beforehand or just slathered it in a bunch of prepackaged sauce and called it good, barbecue and rice were a combination that simply couldn't be beat. That was one dish that could convince them to stuff themselves with rice for sure, staple food or not. Well, anyway, what you pair the omelets with is really just a matter of preference. You can experiment a little and see what works best for you. Oh, but let me tell you in advance, if you season them pretty strongly, they work way better than you'd think as a snack to have with a beer. Oh, I'll have to try that, Ija said. That's good to know for sure, Teresa agreed. I'd almost forgotten that both of them had a taste for alcohol. So anyway, back to the recipe. Once all the seasonings are mixed in, it's time for the square pan to come into play, I said. I oiled my pan and started heating it up on the stovetop. For this recipe, it was particularly important to make sure that every inch of the frying pan surface was covered in oil. I liked to use a small piece of paper towel to spread the oil around evenly, which made the process a lot simpler. Next, I poured about a third of the beaten eggs into the frying pan, spreading it out in a thin layer. Once that layer was mostly solidified, I carefully rolled it up, starting at the far edge and working toward me. Once it was totally rolled up, I pushed it back to the pan's far end, re-oiled the now unoccupied portion of the pan, and poured in another third of the beaten eggs, lifting up the partially formed roll a little so that the new layer of egg could seep in beneath it. Then I just repeated the process, letting the eggs get nice and firm, rolling them up, and pouring in the remainder of the mixture, until finally. "Okay, that should do it," I said. It was far from a perfect rolled omelette, but it hadn't been a disaster by any means either. I transferred the finished rolled omelette to a cutting board and sliced it into bite-sized pieces. "Okay, it's done. Go ahead and give it a try." Ija, Teresa, and Celia each speared a piece of the omelette with their forks, then popped them into their mouths. "Oh, this is delicious. And the seasoning isn't overpowering at all," Ija said. "You're right. It's so perfectly, subtly sweet," Teresa added. "It's really good," Celia said as she gave the other half of the piece on her fork a look of almost tragic longing. "Yeah, I can tell you like it. Go ahead, have some more," I said, offering her the rest of the rolled omelette I'd made. Celia gave me a wide-eyed look, then glanced over at her mother as if to ask if it was all right. "Go ahead, then," Ija said. That was all the permission Celia needed, and she dug in with glee. "So, yeah, that's all there is to it," I said. "Why don't you all try making one yourselves?" It was time for the students to take the wheel and cook their own omelettes. Rolling them up was harder than it looked, though, and I heard more than a few grumbles of frustration as the eggs split apart. "I guess it's gonna take a while before they get the knack for it. It's okay if it falls apart a little. As long as it all stays together at the end, it's fine, and you'll get better at making them all nice and neat with practice. It just takes a bit of time." Astonishingly, Celia ended up being the first of my students to get the hang of the technique and produce a well-shaped omelette. "I guess Celia's in charge of making these," then, Teresa commented, prompting a proud but somewhat bashful smile from the little girl. "Oh, and you can change up the recipe in a bunch of different ways too," I noted. "The method I taught you today is just the basic version. You can adjust the seasoning ratio, like I said before, or even use totally different ones. The cheese and ham I give you guys would go great in them as well. Ground beef too, if you pre-cook it." "I see. We'll have to try all sorts of different versions. You can put cheese in them? That sounds so good." All three of them seemed as pleased as could be to hear how versatile the technique was. Their stock of egg recipes had just expanded considerably, but before they went home, they told me that they thought they'd have to get better at the basic version of the dish before branching out too much. In any case, it wouldn't be long before I learned that rolled omelettes had become a favored beer snack among my employees.